What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crowded Lake, and today we're going to be reading Chapter 2 of A Lesson in Practicality by ResidentAnchor on my pad. So if you want to check out the fic or the author himself, go ahead and click the links in the description below. With that being said, here is Chapter 2, Time Waits for Some. Virgil regretted his decision to drink with Roman the day before, considering Logan hadn't pulled his stunt and sobered him up as well. He had a pounding headache, and work was a few hours away. He sat up and went to the bathroom, pulling out an aspirin from the cabinet, and headed to the kitchen for a drink. He was greeted by Patton, who was cooking at the stove, which meant Logan probably had already been up, and had a rare day at work at the bookstore, meaning he had to treat his hangover the old-fashioned way. He waved to Patton, squinting and not wanting to speak, pulling out a cup and drinking water from the faucet. Usually, he avoided tap water, his brain panicking all about the problems with drinking unfiltered water like that, but his head was distracted by the pounding and suffering from it. He heard Patton move to the table and turned. Patton waved to the food and pointed to him, then the chair, not saying a word. Virgil walked over and was greeted by a plate of eggs and toast. He sighed happily. Logan must have warned Patton of their earlier exploits. Virgil had just sat down when a glass of ginger ale was placed down, and Patton rubbed his back for a moment before heading back to the stove. They both sat silently as he ate, his stomach not too upset to enjoy the meal. Virgil had finished eating and was pushing the remainder of his food around his plate when Patton walked up. "How you feeling?" "Better, thanks, Pat." The elder took Virgil's plate and went over to the sink. "You have work today?" "No, not today. And the apartment is all clean, but I'll find something to do. You have to leave soon, don't you?" Patton turned, looking over his shoulder. "You feeling up to it after last night?" Virgil stood and scoffed. "Roman and I hardly drink, Patton. I have a headache, but I'm fine." Patton looked skeptical, but didn't push the matter, going back to washing the dishes. "I've got to get ready if I want to be there on time." "See ya. Thanks for breakfast." Virgil took a quick shower and got dressed, running out the door before Patton could lecture him about his hair being wet out in the cold. He didn't want to be late, and he didn't want to use his powers, not if he could help it. He pulled out his earbuds, never taking his headphones to work, and popped them in as he raced towards the bus stop, checking the time he'd make it with spare time. But he always wanted to make sure to be prepared in case something went wrong. The bus pulled up, and he took the first open spot, hopping off a few stops later, a few blocks from his job. It was closer to noon on a weekday, the sounds of the city growing quieter as he left the main streets to an older building. He never removed his headphones. His boss didn't care much if he listened to music as he worked, as long as he helped a customer if they asked. He wasn't hired for customer service, but any job like this would demand it if necessary. Virgil entered the store, waving at the cashier as he entered, and went to the back to punch in his start working. It was a slow day, as he organized the small section of fabric sorted ribbon that people would just toss after looking at it. Not that he minded the busy work. About 2 hours into his shift, he had sorted the spools of thread and was organizing the yarn that was going to be on sale next week. The work never took too long, but there was enough to keep him busy, and the store usually was empty on days like today. Usually, is what he told himself, as he felt some tug on his sleeve. He turned and saw an elderly woman smiling up at him as he removed both of his earbuds. "Sorry, sweetie, but do you mind helping an old lady out?" Yeah, sure, I work here, so if you need anything, I can help." "Oh, perfect." She reached over and patted a hand on his arm, leaning on her cane with the other. "I'm looking for the knitting needles. Have to keep up with my grandma parents, you know?" She chuckled at her joke, and Virgil smiled down at her. "Sure, you're not too far off. They're just over there." He turned and slowly walked towards a wall a few feet away. "I know I'm old, but no need to walk like I do. I know your long legs can make you walk faster than this." He looked over his shoulder and saw the old woman with a twinkle in her eye. No need to start walking slowly now. You've got plenty of time to do that yourself when you're my age. They stopped in front of the wall, and he pointed to the section specifically for knitting. Wonderful. You want a tip? Sure. He leaned in and smiled. Knitting needles make for great self-defense weapons. They'll never see it coming. Virgil's face dropped as he looked down at her, before breaking out into a laugh. He knew the whole store could probably hear him. It wasn't a big place, but he couldn't help it. Oh, I'll keep that in mind. He shook his head and smiled down at her. Guess I'll have to take up knitting then. She reached up and patted his arm again. This hoodie you're wearing, did you make this? Or did you find it in one of those dark-lit stores? He looked down at his black hoodie covered in plaid purple patches. Oh, I made it, but I just added the patches. He shrugged and pulled the hoodie closer. Working at a craft store too long, it starts to get to you. It's not a bad habit to keep up with. She turned back to the wall. I'll let you get back to work. You'll see me if I need anything. Virgil smiled and waved, walking back to the yarn display a few feet away. He kept his earbuds out until she had left, answering any other questions she had, and even helping her to the front registers with her checkout. Virgil, is there anyone else in the store? He turned and looked back at the girl after the old woman had left. The cashier was the owner's daughter, who usually helped out most of the time. He shook his head no. Oh, I heard laughter. Thought some kids were messing around. Virgil tensed, ducking his head anyway. Oh, that was me. Sorry, I'll keep it down. You can laugh? He looked up as she leaned forward on the counter. Thought you were only capable of being brooding. He snorted and smirked. Nah, sometimes my soul tries reminding me I still have one. The rest of his shift went on as it usually did, the encounter leaving him more relaxed than he usually would have been. The manager even pulled him to the side and told him the old woman had given a shining review based on what his daughter had said. His boss cut him early and told him he could go home as soon as his usual work has been done for the day, instead of making him organize the storage in the back like he normally would have to. All in all, it was a good day for Virgil, which was a nice change for his usual worries. When he got home, earlier than expected, he found Patton walking out of his room to see who had entered. Virgil, you're home early. Feeling any better from this morning? Yeah, I'm fine now. The boss let me go after I was done with the normal stuff. He pulled his hood down and tucked his earbuds away, walking over and falling back onto the couch. I actually had a pretty good day. That sounds fantastic. I'm glad. Patton put a hand on the doorway to his room and started to head back in. I'll leave you to relax in peace and enjoy the rest of your good mood, okay? Virgil shifted in his seat. I wouldn't mind hanging out with you, Patton. Virgil looked up as his eyes met Patton's less covered ones. I mean, you don't have to if you're busy. I can just hang out and watch a movie or something. Patton spun around and smiled, practically vibrating with joy. Do you really? Oh, I love that. Virgil chuckled and shook his head. If you have something to do, I'm okay with just hanging out. Patton, pal. He looked away and shrugged. They're technically copies of you, right? Well, that's the thing, kiddo. Patton sat down on the couch next to Virgil. They're pieces of me, as well as copies. You helped me figure that out. Right, the whole empath thing. Virgil looked down at the coffee table, and they sat in silence for a moment. Do you think you could help me? With mine, that is. Your power? Patton leaned in and spoke softly. Are you sure? You seem so skeptical of it. Virgil looked back up at Patton and saw the concern in the older eyes. Patton smiled, and Virgil couldn't help feel comforted about how much Patton really did seem to care. I want to know what I can do. After seeing Roman try to work on his, and you and Logan seem to have yours figured out. I'm always learning something new about me and what I can do, Virgil. I've had a little more time with mine than you have with yours. Patton slowly leaned in and put a shoulder on his. How about we spend some time relaxing and we do some detective work together after, huh? We can watch a movie and talk about how you want to approach this. Virgil scoffed. I'm fine, Patton. We can just start whenever. Patton crossed his arms and gave him what Virgil could only describe as the dad look. Okay. You can tell I'm nervous. I get it. We can watch a movie and go after Pops. Patton nodded and stood up and headed to the small DVD archive they had. Actually, I have to make a phone call real quick, Patton. All right. Do you want me to pick what we watch? Yeah, go ahead. I didn't have anything in mind anyway. Patton nodded and waved as Virgil walked out of the room. He grabbed his phone and unlocked it, pressing a few buttons and holding it to his ear, walking to the window. During the fourth ring, a voice answered. Hello? Hey, Dad. Virgil turned and faced the entryway to his living room, towards where his new resident dad was before glancing out the window again. Just calling to check in, see how you've been suffering without me. Oh, it's been dreadful. His father sighed dramatically over the phone. No one plays loud music during the days, and there are no messy dishes in the sink from late-night snacks for me to clean in the morning. It's so boring. Oh, Pops, maybe I should come over and make a mess just to give you something to do. Please don't. Virgil chuckled with a quick response. I miss you, but the last thing I need is having you pop out of nowhere on me. Virgil bit his lip. His power made him seem like he had the ability to just simply appear. He could freeze time and take a few steps and start it up again, making it seem like teleportation. He used to prank his dad from time to time when he was younger, before he really realized he was only scaring him. Virgil held back a sigh and bit his tongue. Yeah, sorry. I don't really do that anymore. None of your roommates know, do they? Can't really see when I do something, can they? Virgil knew he was avoiding the truth, but he didn't want to spill on his roommate's secrets. That wasn't his place, and the fewer people knew, the better. I was just calling to see how you're holding up. Want me to visit soon? I just got off work. I can stop by for dinner. Virgil, your old man is doing fine. Yeah, it's a little lonely, just me here, but I can manage. You're going to end up in an apartment full of cats if I'm not careful. Don't threaten me with companionship, son. At that, Virgil did actually laugh. He rather enjoyed talking to his dad, even if things would get quiet and awkward after they haven't talked and everything. When he moved out, his dad was excited and nervous, just like he had been, but the relationship only grew better with both of them being able to breathe and get some space. I've got a movie date with my roommate. I'll talk to you later, okay? Ooh, a date, huh? Is he cute? Dad, no, not like that. We're friends. Virgil hissed into the phone, looking back and hoping Patton hadn't heard him talking. Besides, I don't really see him like that. He's become like my second dad. Not that he's as cool as you, of course. He can cook better than you, though. Ouch, right where it hurts. Thanks. He heard his father chuckle on the other end. Enjoy your movie. Not date. Talk to you later. Later. Virgil hung up the phone and went into the living room. Patton sat up from kneeling on the floor. Oh, perfect. I had found something I think we've both seen. Just so we won't mind talking over it? Sounds perfect, Patton. Virgil claimed one end of the couch from day one, pretty much, and Patton usually sat in the middle, but he left room for Virgil and sat at the other end of the couch, pressing play on the remote. Virgil brought his feet onto the couch and got comfortable before he heard Patton clear his throat. You okay, Pat? Something bothering you, kiddo? Virgil frowned and looked back at the TV. I'm fine. Why do you ask? The advertisements and warnings at the beginning of the DVD were still playing, so he turned back to Patton, who gave him a concerned look. I can't get anything by you anymore, can I? Virgil sat up and his sunken position. I called my dad. He doesn't like me using my powers. I wanted to tell him, but I couldn't. He laid his head back on the couch and looked at the TV again. I'm just gonna worry about it until I get distracted. Patton turned towards the other, paying the TV no mind. If you're not comfortable, we don't have to push yourself, Virgil. Patton turned towards the other, playing the TV. No, I want this. I want to understand this thing I have. Watching Roman learn about his, seeing you use yours, it's like second nature. I never use mine. I just can't help but worry. He curled into himself more. Worrying is what I do best. I don't think it's what you do best, but worrying about something like that is never a bad thing. Patton turned back towards the TV to see the menu screen pop up. Sometimes I think people forget to worry about some stuff. It's good to have someone to ground them. You don't have to worry about anything you don't think is important. Remember that. Your feelings are valid, no matter what they are. Patton pressed play on the screen, and Virgil stared blankly as the opening started. Patton? Virgil sunk back into his comfortable position. Thanks. He stretched out his legs and nudged Patton with his foot, who smiled back at him. They had started watching the movie until Patton asked questions about what Virgil had already learned, and what he wanted to learn. He had discussed the notebook Logan had kept with all the notes, and decided to share only what Virgil felt comfortable with later if he was up for it. They talked back and forth, Virgil keeping his answers vague until the credits were already rolling, and they had gotten sidetracked. I can make a few, but after 3 or 4, it starts to feel kind of fuzzy, so I usually stick to 1 or 2. Patton completely turned to the other side of the couch, not paying any mind to the TV. I've had slumber parties with myself as a kid, but my parents were never fans, so I just stopped doing it until I moved out. I told them I never used it again, but I think they know I'm not being honest. Virgil did a dramatic gasp, putting a hand to his chest. Patton, have you told a lie? I'm surprised at you. Patton smirked, and Virgil nudged him with his leg, sitting closer than they were before. I either had to lie to them or to myself, and they just don't understand. I've tried talking to them, but I get it. Virgil stuffed his hands into his pockets and leaned forward. No one really understood until you guys, so I just pretended I couldn't do anything, no matter how badly I just wanted to be normal. Oh, Virg, we are normal! Patton reached over and grabbed Virgil in a big hug. Our normal just isn't everyone else's normal, but there's no shame in that. Patton rubbed Virgil's back as the other one just sat there, confused and in shock until Patton let go. You're beautiful just the way you are. Virgil rested his back against the couch and hid his face behind his hair, trying to hide the smile he couldn't seem to get rid of. Patton, come on. It's true. Patton grabbed Virgil's arm and stood up, pulling him along. Now, come on. I promised I would help you, so I will. Right now. Patton nodded enthusiastically. We can eat afterward, and you'll just keep putting it off. You can do it. Virgil nodded and looked up at Patton, taking a deep breath. Take a few steps back, Patton. Ready? Patton let go of him and followed his instructions, leaving a few feet of distance between them. Go ahead, son. Virgil closed his eyes tight and froze. Suddenly, he looked up, stumbling forward and taking a breath of air. He saw Patton in front of him, who had his arms on his hips and stood proudly, smiling down at Virgil. He turned and looked to where he stood. In that spot, where he had been frozen, as always, was a rippled, suspended in mid-air. Virgil always had left them when he broke free of time, figuring it was the way for his powers to show where he had once been, where he had been torn away in frozen reality. He turned back to Patton and flexed his fingers and reached up and grabbed a hold of Patton's shoulders, pulling him forward. Suddenly, after a moment of tugging, Patton stumbled forward and grabbed onto Virgil, pulling him into a hug and using him to keep himself upright. Whoa, okay. Patton pulled back and brushed off Virgil's shoulders. There we go! So how did it go? Virgil smiled proud and tried hiding behind his hoodie. Take a look for yourself. Patton looked around at the TV, seeing it frozen mid-roll of the credits. He glanced at the clock, which had stopped ticking. Oh, okay, this is nifty. He spun around and around. Oh, what's this? It's where I took you out of frozen time. Patton, no, don't. Patton reached out a hand forward into the rippled space, quickly pulling it back at Virgil's intense touch. Don't touch those. Why? What are they? Patton looked over his shoulder at the one Virgil had left behind. They're just wobbly things. Oh, he pointed down at Virgil. Your power's just like that Doctor Who episode, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. Yes, great, Patton. Just don't touch them. I don't know what they do. Patton put a hand on Virgil's shoulder briefly and walked over to where he had broken out of time. Well, mine went somewhere, I think. So, he stuck out his hand through Virgil's, much to the other's dismay, and his hand suddenly came back through next to where it had entered. Oh, that's weird. He wiggled his fingers and giggled. Yours doesn't go anywhere. Virgil grabbed his arms and pulled it back. Patton, you shouldn't just be sticking your hand in those. Who knows what would have happened? Patton frowned and crossed his arms over his chest. Well, how else are you supposed to figure out what they do? Virgil grabbed both sides of his head. I don't know. Stick something else through first, not just your hand? Oh. He dropped his arms to his sides. Yeah, that would have worked. He turned back towards his side. So, yours doesn't go anywhere, so where does mine go? Who cares? Leave it alone. Patton looked over at Virgil, who had once again tried to retreat back into his big purple hoodie to hide away. Virgil, if you want to understand yourself better, you need to take a chance. Isn't that why I'm here? Virgil looked away, shrugging, but not saying a word. Look, I'll just take a peek through mine, and you could hold my hand just in case, okay? If that makes you feel better, and it makes you less uncomfortable, I'll leave it alone. Virgil looked up at Patton, who smiled down at him, holding his hand. His eyes trailed down before reaching out and grabbing it carefully. Fine, but just for a second. Patton perked up and stepped up to where he had originally stood, looking back at Virgil before slowly sticking his head through. Virgil looked down at the hand he held as it suddenly gripped tighter, and he pulled Patton back in panic. Patton, are you okay? The smile on Patton's face was bigger than he had ever turned and looked down at him. It leads to a dog park. Oh, there are so many cute dogs, Virgil. You have to come see. A dog park? Patton nodded and tugged on their clasped hands, encouraging him to follow. They both took a step forward, Virgil closing his eyes as he came up to the portal. After Patton had stopped tugging him along, he slowly opened his eyes. Oh, wow. This is the park across town, isn't it? Time was still frozen, but there were dogs stuck in mid-run, one chasing after a ball that had just been thrown, with two others trailing behind, and a mess of people stopped where they had been. Virgil turned around and reached out his hand, watching it vanish as it came in the connection with where the portal once had been. They're invisible on the other side, but they work both ways. He dropped his hand and looked up at Patton. I've been running across town when I could have made portals this whole time? That's not fair. Portals to dogs, Virgil. That's very important. Virgil looked around the park before shaking his head. No, my portal didn't lead anywhere. Yours did. Patton let go of his hand and took a few steps forward before spinning around. Right, after the movie, I was thinking about how I might take a walk by here. I've been inside all day. Some part of you was thinking about it, so that's where it led. I usually think about stopping time, so mine led nowhere. Virgil and Patton looked at one another before smiling and laughing. That's so cool, Patton. I can make portals. Patton gasped loudly and covered his face with shock. You're like a TARDIS. Oh, what if we were thinking about something else? Maybe a certain event. Could the portals lead back in time? Patton looked at Virgil, who froze. Or we can explore that another day. Want to head back home? Virgil needed no other prompting, and they both reached out and went back the way they came. Virgil went in front of his portal, and Patton stood in front of where he was, nodding and giving a big thumbs up. Virgil closed his eyes tight again, and everything started to move. Patton let out a yelp and stumbled sideways and onto the couch, holding onto it slightly. Wow, what was that? It felt like the planet rotated all of a sudden. Patton looked up at Virgil, suddenly realized what he had just said, causing Virgil to go pale and start to panic. Wait, do I stop the whole planet when I do that? Patton got up slowly as to hide how dizzy it had momentarily made him. No, don't worry. Probably was just a side effect, okay? I stop the whole planet when I do that. Virgil muttered, looking up at Patton. I didn't think about that. It makes sense, though. I don't stop it for just one area. I stop it for everyone but me. Patton wrapped an arm around Virgil, turning him and leading him to his room. Calm down, big guy. Go sit down and relax. I'll make us some snacks, okay? Virgil didn't fight him and walked into his room, as if on autopilot. Patton looked concerned as he pulled the door closed, making a mental note to share his findings with Logan later, if Virgil was okay with that. He heated up some quick leftovers in the fridge and called Virgil out, who seemed better after taking some time to himself. He didn't speak, besides a quick thank you, and they both sat wordlessly at the table. Suddenly, the front door slammed open, causing both of them to jump. Virgil got knocked his chair out from under him. Roman walked in, covering a paper confetti and glitter. He looked over at Virgil, who suddenly found his voice and was biting his lip, trying not to laugh. Don't. Roman walked over to the fridge, pulling out a water bottle and walking to his room. I'm taking a shower. They both waited until the telltale sign of the bathroom door closing before they both burst out laughing. Oh my gosh, you look like a party threw up on him on accident. Virgil grabbed hold of the table. Oh, I needed that. Thank you, universe. Patton wiped away a tear under his glasses and looked up. Finish up, kiddo. We can go check out the dog park after this. You think dogs make everything better. Virgil was still smiling and began to eat off his plate. You're not wrong, though. After Roman's reappearance, Virgil broke out laughing again. Har har, I get it. Hilarious. Roman sat down on the couch and huffed. I'm just glad no one took a photo of it. Oh man, I wish I had. Virgil sat on the couch next to Roman and nudged him, causing Roman to nudge back. I should start calling you Tinkerbell, then. Shut it, all-American terror! That one was bad. You're losing it, Princey. I've had a bad week. Guessing you're not feeling very glittery? Roman and Virgil looked up at Patton, who dramatically shrugged, causing Roman to cover his face and Virgil to break out laughing again. They were interrupted, which Roman was thankful for when the apartment door opened up. How was work, Logan? Patton called out as Logan walked in. 2 days in a row, huh? Logan adjusted his glasses and smirked. There's something therapeutic about organizing and alphabetizing books all day in quiet. He pulled out a few sheets and folded paper from his pocket. I also acquired all the crosswords from the free papers today, as well to do in my spare time. It was a good day, all things considered. Seems like everyone had a good day today. Isn't that fantastic? Roman huffed and crossed his arms. My day was fine until I got water dumped on me. Then someone thought it'd be funny to drop a glitter and confetti all over me on the way home. I looked silly, and it ruined my perfectly good hair day. Roman ran a hand through his hair, which was now pulled back and away from his face. One good day. Is that so much to ask? Logan held up his hand. I have a question for you, Patton. He placed his crossword puzzles on the table. Your copies. They can touch one another, but coming into contact with you merges them back together with you, correct? Yeah, I guess it pulls them back in. Logan nodded at this information. Any discoveries you made today, Roman? No, but I don't mind blowing off some steam back on the roof, if you don't mind. Patton stood up and glanced at the clock. It's going to be all of us for dinner tonight, Roman. How about I let you decide, huh? Roman looked happy at the suggestion. Sure, Pat, that sounds delightful. The rest of the night went smoothly. Logan and Roman went to the roof and Virgil went to his room. Patton stayed in the kitchen and cut an apple for Roman in case he was hungry when he came back in. Using his powers for too long usually made him hungry. Suddenly, Virgil ran into the kitchen from his room and ran to him, not expecting the biggest smile on Virgil's face he had ever seen. Patton, I have the best news. What is it, Slugger? Patton asked before Virgil ran up and held out a bag. What's this? Remember that stuff Roman was covered in earlier? Patton looked down at the bag full of colored paper and confetti. I had it lying around. I was saving it in case I needed to get back at him, and I bet if I tried to go back to this afternoon, I can find Roman before he comes home. I had completely forgotten about it, and it's been bugging me since Roman came back. Patton tried his best to make a disapproving face. That doesn't seem very nice. I just want to test if I could go back. It might not even work. Patton looked at Virgil, knowing very well that if he had tried, it would work. Well, can we go to the dog park afterward? Patton's face finally betrayed him, and he started smiling. I knew you'd join the dark side, Patton. Now let's go have some fun. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the author, once again, those will be the links in the description below. This is the final week that I'm keeping open the Google form to submit fics, because I have enough to get me through the next stage of what I'd like to do. So that's a thing that will be found out really soon, and I'm super excited. With that being said, thank you so much for listening, and much like Virgil trying to make sense of his powers, do your best.